latest pro wrestling news and results as part of Wrestling Rants. Let's get into it on a Thursday. Wrestling Rants back here after a mega rant from Impact's Spring Slugfest and a lot of follow-up from that show this week. Actually, tonight is the debut on Impact Wrestling of Trinity, so check it out on Access TV tonight. If you don't get access, I strongly suggest subscribing to the Impact Ultimate Insiders YouTube. It's $5 a month, and you get all the Impact you can handle, including the free pay-per-views, mostly every month other than the bigger ones. You get those free, and you also get Impact every week absolutely free on that channel to watch anytime you want. Tonight should be an interesting night. This will be the first week of the tapings that I was at this past weekend, so I'm really excited to see what all goes down. I know Trinity's debut will be on broadcast, as well as Speedball Mike Bailey and Jonathan Gresham, and presumably the main event, probably the first week on that one. So keep your eyes peeled back here at Wrestling Rants. You may want to file through some of the videos again from the weekend after Impact airs tonight, because I'm going to be releasing some more videos from basically that first week taping, match finishes more, and a lot more major highlights of the Trinity Fatu debut, pretty much almost in its entirety, a big portion of the promo, things like that. If you didn't watch the last rant, why I didn't post all of the content from Impact yet was I got a contact information email from an Impact executive just asking me to please not show some of the content that was at the tapings over the last weekend, and that I could release that content after it airs on Access TV on Thursday night. So you're going to be looking for 4 separate weeks of different drops of content basically after Impact airs. So come right back here to this channel. There's going to be a lot more videos dropped from this past weekend each and every Thursday night following the episode of Impact. So if you want to get a second look, a second perspective perhaps, after watching Impact on Access, come right back here, because all that content will be right here on Wrestling Rants. All right, we got a big rant to cover here. Everything about the WWE draft. This is mostly going to be a top 10 takes. Rolling back from Tuesday, we're on a Thursday, and we'll still call it Top 10 Takes Thursday, with all those big T's in that one. First, I'm going to kind of get through the draft a little bit. I'm going to talk about everybody that was drafted on each show, everything that happened as far as the free agents situation, talk about that briefly, and then we'll get into a Top 10 Takes, all my kind of big hot takes from this WWE draft this year. I have to say on the outset here, I frankly was not very excited when these shows happened. Now, the anticipation was there. I was definitely interested to find out what they were all going to be doing. But as it were, I was left feeling kind of underwhelmed with things. These shows felt very not put together well. The picks were kind of all over the place. We'll dig a little bit more into that in the Top 10 Takes part of this rant, but very much underwhelming draft, I think. I don't know what I expected, truthfully, going into it, but what I got out of it was just a lackadaisical feel. I liked some of the talent that they brought in to do some of the picks. Bischoff, RVD, Teddy Long, some of those personages. Michael Hayes showed up at one point as well. So I can get down with that part of the draft, but it just felt like something was really weird, like maybe stuff shifted and moved around last minute. Didn't seem like it was planned out very well. I don't know if this has something to do with Vince McMahon getting his mitts back into creative, but it would not shock me. It just felt like just another draft, just another day in WWE world with this stuff, and nothing really groundbreaking to really hang a hat on in this draft, frankly. And we'll see where they go. The new brand split actually goes down starting Monday, following Backlash this coming weekend, which we'll be having a Mega Rant probably Sunday night, maybe possibly Monday. We'll move into Mega Rant territory for Backlash. So be looking for that rant coming up this weekend for sure. All right, let's get into the draft picks. Everything that happened all through the draft, all of the rosters are set. And it starts with Raw. Top pick, Cody Rhodes and Becky Lynch, respectively, for the women and the men on Raw. These were generally in the order of the picks, but in some cases, perhaps not. That was the thing we'll talk about in the top 10 takes, too, is that the order of these picks were really weird. Like, early on in one of the drafts, Indy Hartwell, and some of these, like, really thrown to the wall picks you would think would be in a legitimate draft, like a high pick, were kind of thrown really higher. It's just the order of things was really weird. So we got Raw, Cody Rhodes, Becky Lynch. Obviously, those are going to be your two anchors of Raw. Obviously, you have as well Rhea Ripley coming in, so you can definitely see Lynch and Ripley being paired off sooner than later, probably, as one of the main anchor feuds of Raw. Another main anchor feud, we'll talk about that later as well, is obviously Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. I could see that happening. We're gonna save that for top 10 takes a little bit more, but getting ahead of myself. So we have Cody Rhodes, Becky Lynch on Raw. Imperium also got drafted to Raw. I think this is a good pick. I don't know how much longer Gunther will have that Intercontinental Championship. By the way, IC and US titles did get flipped. Austin Theory is on SmackDown now, of course. But I like the fact of Imperium on Raw. I think that's a better outlet for a big heel unit to be focused on, kind of adjacent to the Bloodline on SmackDown. I felt being on SmackDown, Imperium got lost in the shuffle a little bit with the focus on the Bloodline. Matt Riddle also was drafted for Raw. He'll essentially stay on that brand, I believe. Big pick that got drafted over was Drew McIntyre. It remains to be seen what his future is with the company. There's some rumors that maybe he is looking to get out of his contract later this year. Expires, and not really hearing much in the words of renewal at this point. Things could very well change. We also got The Miz. He stays on Raw as well. He's a Raw mainstay. Shinsuke Nakamura appears to be getting a sizable push with his Raw entry. I like the fact that they're finally doing something with Nakamura. I can appreciate that. We talked about it before slightly. Indy Hartwell, the NXT Women's Champion, who actually is injured currently, is drafted to Raw. Who knows when we'll exactly see her. Also coming out from NXT, Apollo Crews. We'll see if they can get it right with him this time. Not counting on it, because I kind of feel like behind the scenes, or whatever you call it, subtly, I feel like Raw is the Vince show, and Triple H is maybe running the SmackDown brand a little more heavily. We'll see if that remains to be seen, but it would not shock me if that ends up happening. And if that ends up happening, I think a guy like Apollo Crews is pretty much fucked. He's not going to get a break here at all if Vince has got his mitts in it. Candice LeRae, she stays on Raw as well. Makes you wonder if Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae will probably reform as a tag team, because we'll talk about this also in top 10 takes, but there's tag team heavy, very heavy for both the men and the women on Raw for sure. Sonya Deville, Chelsea Green, there we go. There's another tag team, especially for the women's division. JD Madonna coming in from NXT. There's some rumors that he may get shuffled in with the Judgment Day, who stayed with Raw as well. All of the entire group stayed. That's how they did it with this draft. Basically, the entire factions were drafted at the same time. So a weird shift from previous drafts on that one. Maximum Male Models will stay with Raw, or were they with SmackDown? I think they actually were with SmackDown. So this is a switch for them. Natalia is going to be in the mix on Raw. The Viking Raiders, all three of them, so Sarah Logan included. That whole unit is on Raw. Zoe Stark from NXT. I like the potential in Zoe Stark. We'll see if hopefully she doesn't get lost in the shuffle on Raw, because the women's division on Raw is loaded. We talked about it prior. Rhea Ripley, who will now be the Raw Women's Champion after defeating Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's Champion. Keep in mind, Rhea Ripley was originally a Raw talent and did get that SmackDown Women's Championship and really never got her feet grounded on SmackDown. And here she is now, known as the Raw Women's Champion. What a weird way to get to that title, let me tell you. Seth Rollins stays on Raw. He's going to be an anchor of this show. I would not be shocked if he gets this new World Heavyweight Championship belt. Initially, we'll see what happens with that. Also, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn both got drafted to Raw. That effectively concludes the Bloodline feud. I kind of thought maybe down the road there's more juice to Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. I guess time will tell, but at this point they are separated from the rest of the Bloodline. Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez is the Women's Tag Championships. There seemed to be some suggestion that this title may only be defended on Raw. I guess we'll wait and see what happens. As we know, the Women's Championship is supposed to be an open championship to be defended on both brands. But time will tell if they actually do that, or if they're going to try to keep that to only the Raw brand. And I kind of think that's what they're going to do. Again, we'll talk about that in Top 10 Takes a little bit. New Day, Raw. This was not added with Big E. Keep that in mind. So Big E was not included in this mix of the New Day. It was Kofi and Woods only. So Big E was never drafted, along with Bray Wyatt, along with Randy Orton, some other talent like that just, nope, didn't happen. Trish Stratus is staying on Raw, and that makes sense because they're obviously setting up a feud with her and Becky Lynch. I'm guessing SummerSlam on that. Rousey and Baszler are on Raw. That will give some credence that potentially they'll be the next women's tag team champions. Braun Strowman and Ricochet, another tag team, they're on Raw. That was a move. They moved from SmackDown. Bronson Reed stays on Raw. I think that's a good placement for him. Alpha Academy stays on Raw as well. We also got from NXT Katana Chance and Katie Carter. Yet another addition to the women's division and women's tag team division on Raw, which is a pretty steadily loaded deal. We also got Tozawa. See, these are some of the names near the end of the shows, like on WWE.com and some other post-show stuff that were drafted. Dana Brooke, like I said, Emma, Riddick Moss, which is a legitimate couple. They are together on the Raw brand. Indu Sher, the tag team with Veer Sangha and Jinder Mahal, that trios team, they are all on Raw. So that was technically a call-up from NXT, although Veer was a big Raw star, as we know prior. Johnny Gargano sticks on Raw. He's staying with Candice LeRae. Los Lotharios are on the Raw brand. Nikki Cross, Piper Niven, Tegan Knox, Xia Li. These are all women that I think a lot of those were shifted, at least Knox and Xia, from SmackDown. And then also Odyssey Jones, which is a really weird pick. I did not expect to be called up from SmackDown. I have thoughts on this, all these NXT call-ups to either brand, SmackDown or Raw. And Odyssey Jones, I'm telling you, is one that's definitely, I feel, going to get completely lost in the shuffle. SmackDown's roster is a little, size-wise, nothing compared to the Raw roster. We know how they do this because Raw's 3 hours and SmackDown's 2. And I think generally, the SmackDown roster is much smaller too, a little tighter, because perhaps on SmackDown the theme is going to be a little bit more longer segments, longer matches, a little more emphasis on the in-ring, where Raw is kind of, I think, is going to be like this in intention, at least, a faster paced show with a lot more talent being used in smaller doses. I guess we'll see if that happens. But here we go, SmackDown roster. The Bloodline all stayed together. There was some conjecture that maybe they were going to break the Usos up into one brand, and then Solo and Roman would stay on another. That didn't happen. They all stuck with it. I can see why they did that for sure. Just looking ahead on things. Also, Bianca Belair was moved from the Raw Women's Championship. She's now the SmackDown champion. She also joins Street Profits. We know Belair and Montez Ford are a real-life couple. Edge got drafted to SmackDown. That's all right. Just breaking him away from the Judgment Day is fine. Bobby Lashley also got drafted to SmackDown. That opens up a potential program with Roman Reigns, which I think has potential for sure. Damage Control brought from Raw to SmackDown. The women's division on this brand is on a pretty low level. So I'm not sure where Damage Control is going to fit in here, but we'll see. I think there's still something there, but I would not be shocked if Damage Control actually gets broken up soon here, to kind of separate this stuff with that group and to have Bayley go back more as singles. Same with Io Sky, Dakota Kai as well. We'll see where they go with it, but I would not be shocked. Also drafted to SmackDown in a bit of a shock, Isla Dawn and Alba Fire, this NXT, still NXT Women's Tag Team Champions. I guess they're going to be represented on the brand as such. There was really no suggestion on NXT that they were going to get their title stripped, I don't think. Indy Hartwell's a different deal. She's basically surrendering her title, but they did not play that off at the end of NXT with Isla Dawn and Alba Fire that they were like going to be vacating those titles. That was such a weird main event on NXT, by the way, if any of you saw that. We had a SmackDown team and a Raw team vying for the NXT Tag Team Championships in both teams' farewell matches on NXT. How weird was that? Super weird. Hit Row, they are on SmackDown. I could definitely see these guys, for one, going full heel, and for secondly, they're so lost in the shuffle. That botch of a lifetime from Top Dollar he's never going to be able to live that down, and I think that kind of like snake bit the fucking whole team basically by the end of it. Other women signed on the SmackDown brand. We got Lacey Evans. We got Asuka. I like Asuka being moved to SmackDown. I think that's a good move. Tamina, she's still around apparently. Shotzi's staying on SmackDown. Scarlett's going to be on SmackDown with Karrion Kross, of course. Also, Charlotte Flair stays on SmackDown as well. You can definitely see sooner than later Charlotte and Bianca Belair for sure on top of the card, no doubt. Men picks for the single stuff, Austin Theory. We also got LA Knight. I think we'll see where they go with LA Knight. I kind of expected him to go to Raw, so this was a bit of a surprise. Rick Boogs got separated from Elias. We'll talk about that in a second, because Elias is apparently a free agent, which is bizarre. Also, a few NXT guys on the single side. Cameron Grimes has been off TV for quite a while. He's on SmackDown, as well as Grayson Waller. I hope he doesn't get lost in the shuffle, because I think he's a really tremendous talent. So hopefully they'll focus him on the SmackDown brand in a strong way. Pretty Deadly from NXT also got called up for the tag division. See where they go with them. The Brawling Brutes stay on SmackDown, all three of them. LWO is SmackDown exclusive. That is everybody in that group, including Selena Vega. The Usos will stay on SmackDown officially, like I said, to be still with Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa as the Bloodline. Obvious stuff ahead on that. So that's the entire layout of the rosters. Free agents. We'll talk about that in a moment. We might as well just talk about that before we get into the top 10 takes. Elias, Mustafa Ali. These are super weird. Dolph Ziggler is a free agent. Omos with MVP is a free agent. Also, this is bizarre. From NXT, Von Wagner, and I think it was Zion Quinn. Bizarre. The only free agent that makes sense to me at all is Brock Lesnar. That's a talent you can have jump on either brand, as a special attraction. All these other guys I don't get it. I don't know if they're going to eventually sign with one or the other brand. That's what they kind of seem to suggest, but how weird. It's just a really odd thing that they did this. So, yeah, and also missing a few talents as well. We talked about it before. Randy Orton, Big E. Also, some of these talents are kind of in limbo as far as when they will, I guess, be reappearing. Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss. I'm trying to think if there was... Oh, Logan Paul was another one that comes to mind. So, those are the guys or the gals that didn't even get drafted that eventually will probably show up, but I guess it's not a for sure thing. Like, I'm thinking of a guy particularly like Bray Wyatt. All right, so now we kind of covered the gamut of everything. We've talked about who's on Raw, who's on SmackDown, who's free agents, who didn't get drafted. Let's roll into the top 10 takes of the WWE Draft. Let's go on number 10, the announcer switch off. The trade-off between Samantha Irvin and Mike Rome. So Mike goes to SmackDown, Samantha Irvin goes to Raw. From a cosmetic side or whatever you call it, an aesthetic side of the brands, I guess that's all right. I kind of wish they would have switched up the actual like color commentators and announcers for the brands too. I feel like where they have it right now is where they want it, obviously, but it would not hurt to see a little bit of a switch up between all of the announcers. You know, do Michael Cole and Corey Graves, bring Barrett in to Raw, and maybe get the British guy out of there. It's just not working. I don't know who you put in there in respect to replacing him, but that dude is not hitting any fucking stride on Raw. I can't even remember his goddamn name. That's how little I give a shit about that lead announcer on Raw. Let's get into the number 9 top 10 take. The women's tag team discrepancy on SmackDown. We have Isla Dawn and Alba Fire. And then I think other tag-wise, looking at the list here, as I go back, I believe there was legitimately only one other potential women's tag team here. And honestly, that's Damage Control, and I don't even think they're going to be around much longer as a team. So, I mean, they can switch some things up here, but a team like Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, unless you're anticipating breaking that team up too and just say, fuck it, to women's tag teams on SmackDown, very well may be the case here, because the way this was set up on the draft made no sense. On the flip side, we talked about this a little earlier, but number 8 is heavy on the tag teams, both the women and the men on Raw. I mean, looking at this Raw list again, tag team wise, Baszler and Rousey, Strowman and Ricochet, Alpha Academy, Chance and Carter, Indus Sher, Los Lotharios. The list goes on and on here. Imperium, Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville, Candice LeRae, Indy Hartwell, Riddle and potentially Orton. Orton will be probably coming back on Raw. Maximum Male Models, Viking Raiders, Judgment Day, Owens and Zayn. Holy shit! Liv Morgan and Rodriguez, New Day. Whew! That's a fuckload of tag teams. So tag team heavy on the Raw brand this time around. Also, like I said, number 7, we just talked about this. A lot of names forgotten. Orton, Bray Wyatt, Alexa Bliss, Logan Paul, etc., etc., etc. Big E. Where will they show up? When and what brand? Who knows? They could be one of these, again, free agents. I could definitely see that if they do bring back Bray Wyatt. Maybe his as a free agent similar to Lesnar. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not sold that Bray Wyatt's ever coming back with Vince McMahon in charge. We'll see. Number 6. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but the real lack of logic in this whole draft with the picks. So you could pick a certain number of talent in a group as an entire pick, but in a lot of cases, those didn't go right away. Logically, they should have, because it's just more picks. An entire faction is going to have more of a value than like a single pick in a lot of cases. But Not in the WWE draft, folks. Shit just doesn't make sense. A lot of early picks were a bit of a head scratchers a little bit in the big list of things. Just lack of logic and really a straightforward examples of feeling like, hey, this was just kind of thrown together. They really weren't thinking through a lot of these. Like there wasn't multiple drafts of the WWE draft. Just put it to you that way. Talked about number 5 already, the weird situation with the free agents with Elias, Mustafa Ali, Zion Quinn, fucking Von Wagner. What the fuck? Like, why are those guys getting called up from NXT? That's coming up, by the way, here. Almost Dolph Ziggler, etc. Brock Lesnar is one thing, but all these other talents as free agents, y'all get the fuck out of here, WWE. It makes no sense. What about number 4, NXT call-ups? I believe there's something like 11 or 12 call-ups from NXT. I'm really concerned about what the fuck they're going to do with all the NXT call-ups, especially with Vince back in the saddle. I don't like this whole situation. If anything, they should have really limited the NXT call-ups to maybe 2 or 3 per brand at most. That even to me seems like it's stretching it. Instead, you really took a dent out of the NXT roster, and I think a lot of these talents are just going to get lost in the shuffle and are just going to fade off, maybe get cut. I really wonder, like a guy like Odyssey Jones, man, he's going to get so lost in the shuffle. He's not going to get pushed. He's going to get straight up cut. And I think a lot of other talents here, I've been worried about Indy Hartwell and some of these other talents that have really, cut their stone, so to speak, in NXT. They get called up, and yeah, it's just, I'm really concerned. I'm just really concerned with all these call-ups. It was such an excessive amount. It really didn't need to be that much, I didn't feel like. How about number 3, the fresh, with the title switches with the women? It actually opens up a lot of potential for a lot of good feuds. We talked about Charlotte and Bianca. We talked about Becky and Rhea Ripley. There's just a lot of... they've really done fine-tooth comb on the women's sides on both brands to get a lot of unique, fresh matchups for the respective champions. So I can get down with that. I felt that was one of the strong points of the brand split here. Number 2, the Bloodline programs ahead. We're going to probably see for almost a guarantee the Usos and Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns more than likely. We're probably going to see Lashley and Roman. There just seems like there's a lot of direction set for the Bloodline stuff, and I'm all for it. Then the number 1, I think the biggest take of the draft that I got was that potentially with this tournament that really hasn't been given details on yet on the Raw brand for this new World Heavyweight Championship, which is a whole other side rant I could get into. What the fuck's up with that? But it seems like they're setting things up for potentially a plan that was in action to lead to WrestleMania this past year. It didn't happen, but that was Cody Rhodes against Seth Rollins against maybe as a third wheel Drew McIntyre. We'll see if that ends up happening to be the match in Saudi Arabia on Memorial Day weekend for the World Heavyweight Championship. I would not be shocked, though. Maybe WWE, as sort of qualifiers here, will do something like 3 triple threats. Winners of those triple threats go into another triple threat in Saudi Arabia for the championship at Night of Champions. And if that's the case, expect McIntyre, expect Rollins, and expect Cody Rhodes. I would think you got to continue to build that chase with Cody, and you should probably have Rollins go over initially, and then have Rollins put over Cody, maybe at SummerSlam or something like that. So, some interesting things come out of the draft, potentially, but a lot of head scratching, too, with some of these picks going in certain brands, and the real heaviness with the tag teams in one brand, particularly, is something to look out for, and as well, how all these NXT talents going to shine and stand out in the middle of all this other madness on both brands. All right, everybody, come on back. Soon, we are going to be dropping stuff, like I said, from Impact Wrestling show after Impact's done, some more content from the past weekend here in Chicago that I was at. And also look forward to stuff like laying the rant down this weekend. Also we're going to do Impact versus Ring of Honor again, folks. So come on back, and also mega rant time for Backlash sometime this weekend as well. See you all right here for some more Wrestling Rants, baby!